everyone, it's Natalie Bencavanga, and welcome to Facts Over Fear. I don't know about you guys, but I have sticker shock every time I go to the grocery store. If you heard that loud scream, it was me at Trader Joe's the other day. So, why is it all of a sudden grocery shopping is feeling like some kind of luxury expense? Food prices across the United States continue climbing, with grocery costs rising nearly 3% year over year in April, reported PBS, and this was according to new federal data. Now, meat, produce, coffee, and everyday staples are really squeezing household budgets, even as Americans say that their wages have flatlined. Pair that with rising fuel costs, supply chain pressures, extreme weather, and broader inflation. Everything's just colliding at once, and families are feeling it every single week in the checkout line. So today, I'm joined by Bryan Vance of Stumptown Savings, and he has been meticulously tracking grocery prices store by store in his region to understand what's actually happening behind the numbers. So we're going to talk today about why food feels so much more expensive than official inflation reports suggest, how people can adapt to this inflation even as their wages have flatlined, and whether this is truly the new normal for American households. So it's a super light, fun conversation today. Bryan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Natalie.
So, Bryan, I just wanted to get your thoughts, big picture, before we dive into your particular work and what made you sort of focus on food justice, really. What are you hearing and seeing from your community members out on the West Coast in Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, basically exactly what you just said there in your intro is like everyone is feeling pinched. It doesn't matter if they make a comfortable six figures or not. Everyone is feeling like prices at the grocery store have just gone up. Like it has just gotten exponentially more expensive to buy stuff. And even when they're presented with data that kind of counters that in some instances, the feelings are still that that's what's happening. People are really stressed right now, and they're really struggling to make sense of it all.
What I try to do with this show, Bryan, with Facts Over Fear, is to really strip away a lot of that fear mongering and get down to the facts. And what I have found has been really helpful for my audience is connecting these dots across all of these different areas of real injustice that I think a lot of us are feeling. Because we know that food insecurity and food justice, it's not existing in a vacuum. So, what are some issues that you see outside of the food systems that are weighing on this system and putting pressure on it that's causing some of this price inflation?
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was as simple as saying, like, pointing at one specific policy or one specific thing happening in the world that's making it more difficult. But the honest answer is it's just a bunch of different things. So let's talk about the climate. Like the climate is getting harsher and harsher, and the reality is that is tough on farmers across the globe. You have increased droughts, you have increased instances of extreme weather, whether that is too much rain or cold snaps in the middle of May or whatnot. That leads to just awful consequences for all types of farmers. I mean, we saw this in the Northwest this year. The pear season, the Northwest is actually one of the largest regions for growing pears in the world, and we just had not a great season because of weather. Like the weather complicated things. Then you add in geopolitical instability, whether it's tariffs and trade wars or conflicts happening around the world. In America, a lot of our food doesn't actually come from America. The reason you can get strawberries and blueberries in December, I can promise you they're not grown in America. They're coming up from South America, they're coming in from other countries around the world. And so when there's conflicts happening in other parts of the world, that complicates things. It makes the supply chain more expensive. It makes getting that stuff shipped to you more expensive. And then you look at like what's happening with Iran right now and the way that the oil crisis is happening. Pretty much our entire food supply system worldwide relies on oil, whether it's the actual transportation costs, the fertilizer, a lot of fertilizer, modern fertilizer is petroleum based, packaging, all of that plastic and everything that goes into, the clamshells that your berries are packaged in, that's all plastic, that's all oil based. So it's like all these different things are adding up. And the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand about the food system is margins are way thinner in the food industry than other parts of the economy. I think people are used to hearing, software companies making just like ridiculous amounts of money, and they might have a profit margin of 30 or 40%. You look at a restaurant, it's usually, single digits. A grocery store, it's on average like 3%. So even when it feels like they're price gouging you, it's like they're actually not making that much money off of stuff. And that means that anytime that there's some sort of disruption to the market, there's just not a lot of insulation there. So it has to trickle down. It has to result in increased prices because they don't have any wiggle room to absorb those costs. And so it's all these little things are happening all the time. And, it's like we can't catch a break. We had the COVID pandemic, which disrupted the global supply chain and also led to inflation. But then immediately after that, we had conflicts in Ukraine and now conflicts in the Middle East. And then we've had ongoing climate issues. And then we had tariffs that were disrupting supply trades and all that stuff. And it's just like the food industry at large can't catch a break. And then when that trickles down to smaller producers, it's just an incredibly tough time out there for them. And it results in increased costs for everyone across the board.
No, I appreciate that sort of very clear and succinct breakdown because it is a lot of different factors. And then you see things like that really start to make me angry, Brian. And when it comes to things like personalized pricing on some of
Yeah,
these websites, right? Like I think More Perfect Union did a expose recently on
from
how
Instacart.
different, yeah, how different, yeah, Instacart and all of these spaces are utilizing sort of personalized pricing. And what is that, you ask? That means Brian might be willing to pay $4 for a container of strawberries, but they know I might be willing to pay 5. And so they'll
Yeah,
adjust pricing to match perhaps what a person is willing to pay. And there's a real insidiousness to that I think has spilt over into the larger psyche as it regards the food systems. And so I think it's a fair thing that you said that these margins are razor thin to begin with because it's important to note how many different factors play into this. I know here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I love a farmer's market, and
yeah,
I'm a big
yeah.
fan of going and supporting my local farmers all summer long. And I take after my mother. I just like talking to everybody. So that's really how this works, right? I've got like all these
Yeah,
new vendor friends. And one thing that really struck me the last year, it was incredibly wet here in Pittsburgh. We're not known for high winds and a ton of rain. I mean, it was
right.
extremely wet and it messed up my farmers markets because I would go and I would be like, "Hey, where are your greens? Where are these?" And they would say,
Yeah,
"It was too wet. We couldn't get what we normally get." And so everything came very late in the season. And it's a very sobering reality when you realize one, how much we're interdependent on each other to survive, but also how fragile all of this is. And so when we see our government playing Russian roulette with tariffs and with trade with other nations, but also with our own ecosystem, our own environment by lifting
yeah,
regulations from the EPA and dismantling things in front of us, it's very scary because what's that one Iroquois statement like you when will man understand you can't eat money? You know?
yeah.
So,
Exactly. Like,
right? There's a lot to be
yeah,
said.
yeah. It's and I think like some to those specific things you're talking about, like I think it's important for people to realize that like you may not see the results of certain federal policies right away, but they have long-term consequences. So dismantling environmental protections you may not see the consequences today, but 10, 15 years from now is when you're going to feel it. And it's going to be a little too late to just simply be like, my bad and undo it. It's then going to take as long, if not longer, to try to reverse those things. But in the meantime, small farmers, farmers markets tend to be small family farms, which we have very few of those left in America. We lose so many of them every single day, but they really have no wiggle room. A lot of farmers are on SNAP in America. Like family farmers are on SNAP in America. How messed up is that? That the people who are growing food make so little money that they have to be on food assistance themselves. Like we just do not prioritize that in our country. And to things like Instacart and DoorDash is now doing grocery delivery and all these things. I think another thing that a lot of people don't think about is like yeah, it's convenient to have that stuff delivered. But now that grocery store has to split its profits with yet another person, another company, another middleman. And so that is whittling down their revenue streams. And whether you like it or not, a grocery store is not going to operate if it can't make a profit. And so
No.
they're going to increase prices. There's no such thing as free delivery. I think a lot of people really got hung up on the whole Amazon model of like free 2 day delivery. It was never free. Amazon was operating at a loss with the specific goal of driving tons of businesses out of business.
Wow.
And now we're seeing that same thing happening in like the grocery industry. We're seeing these tech companies, these middlemen come in and try to offer convenient options to consumers and making it look like it's free or it's low cost, but it's not. The costs are being, wringed out of the grocery stores, out of the producers, and in other ways out of the user with that like surveillance pricing or personalized pricing stuff that you were talking about. And it's just, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like we're just getting hit on all these different sides. And it's really tough to kind of follow all that. I mean, I do this full time, and even I sometimes struggle to keep up with everything that's happening. So I can only imagine as like a person who's working a 9 to 5 that isn't tracking groceries, and struggling with, just day-to-day life and everything else, how overwhelming it must all feel.
No, absolutely. And I think the elephant in the room is really the system that's keeping all of this in exactly in the way that it is and the way they designed it to, which is capitalism. I mean, when you're talking about, we're not prioritizing our farmers, a lot of them are on SNAP. When we're talking about the consolidation of our food systems into the hands of larger and larger conglomerates, it's only like a few companies at this point that really own like the majority of food product
Yeah,
that we receive. When you're talking about the big boys like Amazon and these tech giants who are driving away small businesses and closing them down, so this Walmart is the only place you can go for food in this food apartheid state. To me, all of that goes back to a system that we've completely decided not to regulate over years and years and years of whittling away any kind of legislation or regulation that would impact and support the people. And you hit the nail on the head when you said we don't often feel these things in the moment, or perhaps
yeah,
there's this tiny sense of a victory in a moment, but we don't realize the tsunami that is
yeah.
coming for us. And so, with your work in particular, can you share a little bit about it and why do you feel so passionately? Why is this the thing that you really wanted to focus your own, journalistic endeavors on?
Yeah, I mean, so with Stumptown Savings, my whole goal is to help people better understand their local food system. We have a ton of people covering restaurants in Portland. We had nobody covering grocery stores, and the majority of the food that we eat is the food we eat at home. And so my goal there is to help people, figure out who has the best prices, who has the best sales, but also where is your food actually coming from and why is it cheaper at this store than that store? What are you actually trading off when you get that, 99 cent a pound uh, beef, which would be an insane price right now, but like there's some sort of trade-off. So I'm trying to help people understand that. And from a no judgment, standpoint, I'm not, if
Right.
you can only afford to get the cheapest thing, that's not your fault. And like if that's what you're prioritizing, I want to help you do that. If you care deeply about making sure that we can support local farmers, I want you to also be able to see where you can buy that stuff and get it. And I guess the reason it matters so much to me is, I started this when I got laid off. So I was working at a journalism startup. They laid me off right at the height of when eggs were reaching historic highs. I was, faced with the reality that my income just went from 6 figures to nothing, and I needed to figure out how to eat in, Portland, Oregon, which is not a cheap city to live in. Our cost of living has gone up way faster than the rest of the nation's. Basically, the entire decade plus that I've lived here, it's an expensive place to live. Food, in particular, is expensive here, and it has gotten more and more expensive at the same time that we're seeing record numbers of homelessness and we're seeing record need at food pantries and other sorts of mutual aid that to aim to solve some of that stuff. And so it's personal for me because I was dealing with that instability myself, but it's also just like food is important to us. We all have to eat, no matter if you're the richest person on the planet or the poorest person on the planet. We all share one thing in common, which is that we have to eat. And even those super rich people and those super poor people still have to buy their food usually. And so it's for me, it's like a great way to sort of unify us to bring us all to the table over a common thing and to just help demystify sort of what's going on. I really want to make sure that I know where my food is coming from and how this system works and where it's functioning well and where it's not. And I know that there are a lot of people locally who also want that and are willing to, you know, go
Right.
along with this journey. I'm still figuring out like how I actually do some of that through my journalism. I've played around with a bunch of different things. I do my own price tracking, so I basically do my own localized version of the consumer price index. I do taste tests to review like who's actually making the best stuff, but then I also cover store closures and acquisitions and all that, which all trickle down to do things like either lower or increase costs, lower or increase, competition in the industry. I profile farmers, and that's how I learn some of the challenges they're dealing with, but also some of the opportunities they're seeing. And for me, it's all just from the lens of helping people better understand this sort of hidden economy that is really a huge part of our life.
So, what was something that really surprised you about this work when you started doing this after you had been laid off and you were struggling to understand, how you were going to make ends meet? What surprised you?
I mean, there's been a lot. One thing that's been really interesting, Natalie, is I thought when I started this, my core audience would be people who are like they've got like $50 a week to spend, and
Sure.
that's not who it is. I mean, I have those people for sure, but a lot of the people on my newsletter list, for example, are spending 200 $300 a week for two people. Like they're not living on a shoestring budget for this, but even they are feeling the pinch. That 200 $300 a week doesn't go as far as it used to. They're not getting what they used to out of it. That's been really surprising that this isn't just limited to like the lower rungs of our economy. Everyone's feeling it. Also, just like I knew that there's some weird gimmicky marketing out there, but I didn't really understand just how complex it is until I started tracking egg prices and
Mm,
realizing, like, I've always known this is a weird myth that a lot of people buy into. They think the color of the egg matters to the nutrition. It doesn't. Brown eggs and white eggs are the exact same eggs. It's just about the pigment in the shell. It has nothing to do with nutrition, but there's more than that. There's all this opaque labeling and branding and whatnot on eggs that can make it seem like you're getting a higher quality product than you really are. And actually, one of the worst offenders of this, in my opinion, is Whole Foods, who doesn't really use standard industry terms like cage free or free range. They use like outdoor access. Well, what does outdoor access actually mean?
right.
It could
Right.
mean that they get outside for 5 seconds a day. It could mean that they actually never go outside, but theoretically there is a way if they wanted to like jump
Whoa.
over a ladder or whatever to get outside that they could get outside. And I'm not picking on Whole Foods, but like
Oh, you
eggs
can
are
pick
an
on them.
area eggs are an area where it's just really confusing. There's all this misinformation out there. A lot of it pushed on us from the actual, egg producers and the people who are packaging and selling these products. And it's just it's like a really clear example of just how confusing and unclear everything is in our current food system. Labels don't mean what people think they mean. Terminology doesn't mean what people think it means. And you might be paying for something expecting that you're getting one thing, and in reality, you're getting something completely different. And that's just true in so many other parts of the grocery industry right now.
We're totally going to have to do another segment where we do a what does this word mean? And I can share
Yeah.
with you like a bunch of different industry words, and then you tell me what it actually means. Because I love this kind of stuff because people don't know. I learned so much by doing this show, and this is a
Mhm.
perfect example of that because I love having people on that really know their stuff in their space and can share it and help educate and activate all of us to be able to make better choices. So when I was thinking and listening to what you were saying, I was like, my gosh, these issues, they're so massive, they're so intertwined. And then I realized, we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about the environment, we're talking about tariffs and war and all of these things. And the thing too that just hasn't helped at all is the fact that our minimum wage at the federal level is still stuck at $7.25.
Yeah.
Brian, when I think of what, like, that's a coffee. If you go to buy a coffee out,
Oh
right? You
yeah,
go get a latte. I mean,
yeah,
we were both at the we met you guys for everybody that's going to be watching this. We met during the online news association's creator C cohort. We were both a part of the cohort.
yeah,
Shout out to us. And it was
yeah.
really cool. And it was in Chicago. And I was so impressed with all of the incredible work that you were doing. But Brian, I went to get a latte because they didn't have coffee
At the
it was
hotel,
at
the
the
thing upstairs. Yeah,
it was like $9. I almost had a heart
yeah. It
attack. And
was nuts.
it was nuts. And then I asked them, I said, "Hey, why aren't you guys offering us coffee at this conference that people are paying a lot of money to be at?" And they basically said, like, we would love to, but it was an exorbitant amount for a gallon. And so it was cost prohibitive for a
Yeah, it didn't make
conference.
sense.
Yeah, they couldn't even do it. So I think once again, this all lends itself to say, when we look at the larger systemic issues that are not going to go away, that are probably going to get worse, and we refuse to address the minimum wage crisis. In
Mhm.
Pennsylvania, we are at I call it the starvation wage of 7.25 an hour because no one can live on it.
Yeah, that's unsustainable.
Yeah, you just can't. I argue barely people can live off of 25 an hour. I don't think
Yeah, I
that.
was about to say ours is in Portland. It just went up again. I think it's like 16.25 or 16.50. That is still not a living
No,
wage
it's
in
just
this
not.
city. Like
It's just
it's
not.
not even close.
No, and Pittsburgh and Portland are kind of interesting because I think they mirror a lot of each other in the
Yeah,
sense that we've also seen sort of this renaissance of people want to be here. There's some cool stuff happening, but the cost of living has totally driven away whatever growth that we were having. And the only
yeah,
communities that really are growing are immigrant communities. And then we have the huge presence of ICE here causing
yes,
problems. So then you take all of that into account and all of this is to say, this really brought out the sunshine, and I'm always happy to be able to do that. But I like to end with some kind of call to action. So if people are going to the grocery store, what are some tips or tricks that you can give them to help them make a more educated choice around their food, especially when they can only get, let's say, what they need and they have to stay with
yeah,
a certain budget?
yeah. I mean, one thing I would say is like one of the biggest mistakes I think a lot of people make is showing too much allegiance to a single store. So
Hmm.
try not to always shop at the same store week after week if you can. It doesn't mean you need to go to two or three stores in a single week, but pay attention to who has the better prices on dry goods, who has the better prices on produce, who has the better prices on meat, because it tends to not be any one store that actually has all of that. And some of those things you don't need to buy every week. So if you can get a really good rate on rice and spaghetti and cereal and whatnot at a store that you wouldn't necessarily want to get produce and meat from, that's fine. Go there once a month and get all that stuff. That's going to save you a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Local doesn't necessarily mean more expensive. So my wife and I are both lactose free,
Mhm.
and we have been drinking Fairlife, this like ultra filtered milk that removes the lactose. It's pretty expensive. You don't even get a half gallon, and it's like almost $6 for that. Uh, One of our local dairy companies out here makes the same thing sold in a larger carton size, still not a half gallon, but a few ounces shy of it for like $4. And it's significantly cheaper. So local doesn't have to mean more expensive. And that's a great way to just keep more money in your economy. And yes, even if it is a little bit more expensive, the important thing to know is that when you spend money with a local business, whether that is a local store or a local dairy or a local whatever, 3 times that amount actually circulates in the local economy versus when you buy something from a big corporation where sometimes less than $1 of each dollar that you spend recirculates locally. So it's just you have a much bigger impact on the local economy when you shop local. And then one other tip, buy things in bulk. That doesn't mean you actually have to buy huge amounts of it. Lots of grocery stores have what they call bulk bins where you can just like get as much as you want or as little as you want.
Yep.
Often that is way cheaper per ounce than buying prepackaged stuff. And it's actually often fresher because they have to restock that stuff regularly versus packaged flour, for example. Let's say packaged flour. You're buying a bag of flour for, say, a 5 pound bag of flour for, say, $5, so $1 a pound. That was packaged at, a facility. That
Mhm.
was then shipped to a warehouse. That was then shipped to another warehouse and then shipped to the store. So it's been sitting for a long time versus if you were to get that flour from a bulk bin, I've seen it for as little, same exact brand, for as little as like 67 cents a pound.
Wow.
That's coming directly from the manufacturer to, either the store's warehouse or a third party warehouse and then to the store, and it's being replenished a lot faster. It's a lot fresher and a lot cheaper. You can also buy exactly as little or as much as you want and reduce food waste. And so shop the bulk bins for the things that you can as well. It's a great way to save some money and just cut down on packaging too, because it doesn't come wrapped in all this plastic and all this other stuff. So that's probably my personal favorite tip.
I love that tip. We have a co-op near where I live, and I buy a ton of my
Yeah, co-ops
grain.
love the bulk bins.
Yep.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff in bulk. And I'll add two more things. I'm vegan. So eat beans, you guys, because canned
Oh
beans
my God,
are
beans are so cheap.
they're so cheap and they're still
But get
so
the
nutritionally dense and they're good.
get the dried ones because canned beans are cheap, but
Yes.
dried beans are even cheaper. And
Yes.
then you can season them exactly how you want. So if you're on a low sodium diet, you don't have to worry about getting special beans and whatnot. I mean, you can get beans for sometimes like 50 cents a pound, and that's quite a lot of beans.
Yeah,
And
it
they're
really
so
is.
nutritious. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nuts.
No, I couldn't agree more. And my last favorite thing that I like to do, because I love that you do this with the grocery stores, and so it lends itself to we're already thinking about how we can sort of extend what we bring home. And I buy bulk when it comes to like rolled oats, and then I make my own oat milk, which is literally a cup of oats, 4 cups of water, pinch of salt, blend it for 30 seconds, put it through like a like a little strainer,
Yeah, to
and then
really
stick it in
strain it out.
yeah, and in a mason jar, and it's perfect for when you need milk. And so those like little things that you learn along the way that really don't take a lot of time or effort, but they can save you money. And to your point, it's like fresher. There's not a lot of preservatives and those kinds of things. And
You
um,
can throw away.
yeah, but we have to do this again because I feel like we literally
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
scratch the surface on all of this. But in the meantime, if people want to learn more about the incredible work you're doing, where can they go and how can they follow you?
Yeah, so they can come to the website, stumptownsavings.com. That's where you can read every piece that I publish. It's a newsletter, but it all publishes as an article as well. You can find me on TikTok or Instagram, also at Stumptown Savings, where I post short little vertical videos of me breaking down grocery deals or explaining who won a grocery store sushi taste test, stuff like that. Yeah, you can find me any of those places.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bryan. And until next
Yeah.
time, everyone, please take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.